All right, guys, we are back, and with us this week we have real estate extraordinaire, good friend of mine, JJ Chapa. How you doing, JJ?
Brother, I'm doing well, man. I'm doing really, really well. Thank you for asking.
That's awesome, man. I know we were talking pre-show, just the impacts of 2020, and from a real estate perspective, I know you guys saw a lot of good things happening, within the market. It's almost a double-edged sword, I guess, if you want to say it that way, with how good the real estate market was going, at least specifically here in Texas. Um, Now, 2021, one of the big things that I wanted to help my listeners with is, and I'm sure people have the goal of buying a home, and everyone listening at home, we're going to take it from the Texas perspective. So the things that JJ may talk about, there may be some different depending on where you're at in the US or around the world. Real estate may operate a little bit differently. So just understand that what he's talking about applies to Texas for the most part, and in other states there may be similar items and it may be called differently. So I just want to caveat that, so as you guys listen to the show and not, hey, I heard this real estate agent say I can do this, and it doesn't apply within your state. So the questions are going to be geared to how can we buy, or what is the process of one trying to buy a house in 2021, and then we'll flip to those that own their home looking to sell, on tips on trying to get the most for their home. So JJ, what is one of the biggest things, or walk me through what is the first step someone has to do as they start to get ready to purchase their first home or a home in general?
The very first thing that people need to understand when they're purchasing a house is that they're purchasing two things, and typically they're going to buy the house. That's the fun and exciting fun part, right? But they're also going to be buying taking out a loan for that house. So they're basically doing two things, two big things at the same time. The loan part is not the fun part. Okay, the shopping for houses, that's the cool, fun part that everybody loves to do. But the very first thing that a buyer needs to do is understand what they can purchase, number one, and what they need to do to get into the position to purchase and take out a loan, because that is a big step that sometimes buyers come to us and say, well, we're ready to buy a house. And it actually just happened this week. We sent them a house, we were sending them some houses, and then they decided, oh, well, we need to go ahead and put our house on the market. But they hadn't talked to a lender yet, and when they did get their credit pulled, their credit score was nowhere close to where they needed to put their house on the market and be pursuing another house. They weren't getting the second house, and if they sell their first house, they're going to be homeless. So understanding your financial position going into it, talking with a good mortgage lender, step one, automatic, always, every day. Because the other thing is, you don't want to be looking at $500,000 houses,
True.
and then all of a sudden, your lender says, well, you can only buy a $300,000 house. So you're getting used to caviar, and all of a sudden you gotta drop down to, not necessarily, you're having to drop your taste down a little bit, and so you got to really understand what you can realistically afford. So that's probably the number one thing, is talking to a good mortgage lender that's going to walk you through and help you understand the mortgage process and what you can afford to buy.
No, that's great, because purchasing power is one thing, that as a customer really helps you as an agent really kind of tailor, I'm assuming tailor where you show, what parts of town, and what kind of house that you're really kind of aiming and going for. I'm assuming you understanding their purchasing power helps make your job a little easier.
Yeah, we're only as helpful as your real estate agents. We're only as helpful as the information that we know about your transaction. So if you have no idea how much house you can afford, or what your monthly payment's going to be, or any of that kind of information, then we really don't know where to start showing you. I mean, we don't really want to start showing you $500,000 houses if we're only going to be able to go up to 250. And in our market, 250 is a totally different area than the $500,000 priced house. And
Right.
so we want to make sure that we understand, we want to provide you the best service that we can. Absolutely. And that's really our goal as real estate broker as on our team. But we've really got to have the information to be able to advise correctly and put you in the correct spot. Because again, we don't want to be showing houses in like a Frisco, and for example, in Dallas, in the Dallas area, when really we need to be looking at maybe a Grand Prairie area, where the housing prices are a little bit different.
Now, once a buyer has gone through that process, has talked to a loan officer and kind of getting their stuff situated there, after that, what's the real next step that a buyer should really consider as they're talking to a real estate agent to really help them hone in on the house that they're looking for?
Well, I think one thing, and I think it's not really what the customer needs to understand, or I don't think it's something the customer needs to do. I think it's something that they need to understand. They need to find a real estate agent that's going to educate them about the home buying process. So first thing is talk with the mortgage lender. So typically when we get a buyer, we send them off to the mortgage lender. We've got some really great lenders that we use. The second thing we do, because we're the professionals. We do this every day. We help buyers and sellers every day. This is what we do. Uh, I can't I can't expect a buyer or a seller to come to me and say, "This is what I got to do next." They don't know. They do this maybe once every 5 years, maybe once every 10 years. They don't know what to do. So the next thing that we do, so what we do is we make our buyers go through a buyer consult, whether they've done this 5 times before, or if this is their first time to buy a house. We give them a 30 to 45 minute buyer consult where we explain every part of the real estate transaction. We tell them what a title policy is. We tell them what a mortgage insurance policy is, or mortgage insurance protection. We tell them what a survey, what an appraisal is, what a home inspection is. We tell them, we help them understand the timelines of a real estate contract and the real and the ramifications of this legal document that you enter into with another party. That it is a legal document, that there's ramifications if we don't meet certain deadlines and timelines. These are things that a lot of buyers and sellers don't really remember from their last transaction, or if it's their first transaction, they don't understand it at all. And so we as professionals, we make our clients go through that first time home buyer, or that buyer consult. Now, if you're in a position where you don't have an agent that's done that for you, there's a lot of really good YouTube informational pieces to understand the home buyer process. We have some real estate videos that buyers and sellers can use to kind of understand the home buying process. Is the videos we use are basically the same thing that we do one-on-one with our clients. But it tells you need to understand what an appraisals are, what surveys are, what an inspection period is, what an inspection is, what wood destroying insect reports are, what your what's title insurance. These are all things that you need to understand. Again, we on our team, I'm always with my girls, we need to be able to answer the questions before the client even knows what to ask. And so we answer those questions beforehand. So if you're in an area where you don't have an agent like that, or you haven't found an agent that does that right off the bat, like I said, there's plenty of home buyer videos that you can look at where you can answer those questions yourself and then get on board and understanding the timeline. And I do this for one reason, one important reason. I look back at the first house I ever bought. Okay. And that house was a house in Lubbock, Texas, where I went to college. And my mom and dad had kept a house that they for my sister and I. When we went to college, we wouldn't have to have a house payment, or we wouldn't have to live in the dorm, and we had housing situated. Well, the house next door to ours, that one came up for sale, and so I went and talked to the guy. They were just an older couple, and they were fixing it up. And I said, "What are y'all going to do with this house?" And so we're going to sell it. I said, well, can I buy it? And, I look back on that transaction. I was 19 at the time. I worked part-time, and I left that closing not knowing anything about real estate. There wasn't a realtor on my side. It was just a for sale by owner thing. And I left that transaction thinking I'd made the biggest mistake of my life because I signed a whole bunch of documents. I didn't know what any of them were. I didn't even have the house inspected. I just had no idea what I was doing. And I left that thing thinking I just made the biggest mistake of my life. And how in the world is a 19-year-old part-time college kid going to make his $200 a month house payment? That was what my house payment was $200, $200 a month. And luckily, I didn't screw my life up too bad buying that little $20,000 house. I ended up just selling it about 6 months ago. That $20,000 house turned into an $80,000 sale, but I've rented it out for almost 30 years. But there's so many times I look back at that stupid 19-year-old college kid that had no idea what he was doing. I'm thinking, man, that must be how our first-time home buyers come to us. They have no idea what's going on, and they really should understand this home buying process, because we want them to understand that, because it makes the transaction on our end that much easier. But it's also something that everybody should understand, because you're buying the most expensive thing you will probably buy in your life, which is a house. So that's probably the second thing they need to do, is really understand the home buying process, whether it's with your realtor or through online videos or some sort of education. We'll do home buyer presentations all day long for whoever, wherever they're at. So
Right.
if anybody ever has a question about the home buying process, now, of course, it's Texas, it's Dallas based. I'm not sure, they may be different in New York State or California, but real estate transaction is understanding that up front is really critical.
Now, one thing that you said that I really really want our listeners to hone in on, because I think there's a misconception out there, especially with TV and the media and things of that sort of how easy real estate is and how easy real estate transactions happen. But you hit some. This is a legal binding contract that someone is entering, is it not?
Oh yeah, and there's legal ramifications. I mean, you can be sued for your inability to live up to the standards of your contract. And a seller can be sued, a buyer can be sued for specific performance, a seller can be sued for up to 3 times the purchase price of the house. There are legal jeopardies that you can get into if you do not understand the documents that you're signing. And 80%, I mean, a lot of for sale by owners, they'll tell, the research is for people that just decided one day, hey, I'm just going to sell my house without a realtor. 80% of them would never do it again, because there's so many pitfalls in a real estate transaction. I'm dealing with one right now where we just found out my seller is dealing with his deceased brother's estate. He has no idea what the house condition is. We just found out that the house has some pretty serious problems. And in this situation, my seller's leaning on me pretty hard to understand what direction we go, and because there are some legal ramifications if we don't present the house in a certain way. He could have some legal liability. He just wants to be done with this thing, because it's again, it's his brother's house. But yes, it's a real estate transaction it can cause you legal jeopardy. And this is why it's important to hire a good real estate professional that understands the ramifications and keeps you out of those problems.
Yeah.
That's our job, is to keep you from being sued on the backside. And we're not attorneys, and if we see the need to have you call an attorney, we'll definitely point you in that direction. But we understand the the real estate contracts in whatever state we're in, and we're going to keep you. Our job is to make sure we follow the rules of that agreement between two parties. That's our job, is to make sure that we don't cause our clients to get in any kind of trouble, legal trouble.
No, I love that too, because I would like to put away the idea that the real estate agent, again, just based on what you see on TV and stuff like that, is just a salesman. That is not the role of a real estate agent. Am I right?
Man, before I got into real estate, I owned a business. It was and I sold it, and I'm thinking, Mel, and it was kind of real estate related. It was we did title surveys for real estate transactions, so I kind of knew a little bit about the real estate transaction. And I thought realtors were the biggest scam artists, and they just got paid for nothing and nothing. They just had to open the door. Being a realtor is like the hardest job you will ever have because, again, you are dealing with people's financial security because the house is going to be their biggest asset. You have to understand their needs. You have to understand their you have to be able to manage all personalities in a real estate transaction. So you're kind of a man. You really have to be able to do a lot of different. And when I got into it, I'm thinking, man, this is all you have to do is open the door and just let people in, and everything else just kind of falls into place. This is the easiest money you'll ever make. That is the furthest thing from the truth, and there's a reason. There's 80%. I think the number is like 87% of realtors don't make it past their first year in the business. A lot of them don't realize the issues and the things that you have to deal with as a real estate agent. And it's not just you close a deal and then it's over.
Right.
I think the first deal I ever closed, my I think my buyer, and this was back. I mean, this was almost 20 years ago. My buyer called me like 2 weeks later and said they had a problem with this, and I'm like, well, that's not my problem. But honestly, as a real estate agent, if you have a fiduciary responsibility to your client, you have that responsibility to that client forever. So yes, it was my problem. And I quickly found out that my deal did not stop the day it closed. My deal continued, my commitment to my client. Because when I made that commitment to my client as a fiduciary for them, it survives the closing. It goes all the way till forever. So I've had 3 calls today on buyers that bought last year, and they all needed to know how to go about getting their homestead exemption, because we mail out letters to remind them to get their homestead exemption, which is going to save them money on their taxes. They don't know how to do it. So I always make it to point every year to say, hey, send them a letter. If you need help getting your homestead exemption, call us. So just because the deal closes doesn't mean our obligation to our clients stops. They continue to call us all the time. I had another client text me pictures of some stuff. We just closed her about 2 weeks ago. She got some stuff in the mail, and she was wondering if it was legitimate or not. It was all junk mail. It was scams.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things your obligation to your client does not stop. And basically, as the real estate agent in the transaction, our job is to make sure that you're not doing something that we wouldn't do ourselves. That's why you hire us. And then sometimes that means me talking. Like, I'll give you an example. So we were working with one of my partners was working with a young mother in Grand Prairie. Her budget was very limited in 150, and that's a hard purchase now. We ended up getting her into contract on this house. We had the home inspection done, and so we're showing up to the home inspection. My partner, the client, and myself, and I'm there a little bit. I always show up a little early so I can talk to the home inspector. And I talked to the home inspector. His name was John. I said, John, what's this house like? And he said, man, this house just needs to be torn down. And he said it was one of the flip. It was a flip. So it was like lipstick on a pig is what it was. They made it look really great on the inside, and my buyers loved it. Our buyers loved this house. It was big, had a good sized backyard for her family. It was under 150, which was really surprising that we could find it. But underneath the house, the sewer, none of the toilets and the water, the black water or the gray water lines,
right,
all the sewage was under the house. So basically, this house was in a cesspool. And over the years, it had been like that for like 10 years. It had rotted out all the subfloor. Plus, it was mold all up and down, all up in this thing. The house had serious foundation problems because of it. And then home inspector said, I don't even want to go back in that house because there's probably there people could get really sick living in this house. So in that situation, the client, she loved this house. And I said, I told her in good conscience, I cannot tell you to continue to purchase this house. And I had to fight with her for like 1 or 2 days. She was dead set on buying this house. I said, look, if you were my daughter or my mom, I could not live with you buying this house. Ultimately, I talked her out of buying that house. And long story short, she was just so frustrated with the process at that point, because she'd already put a contract on the house. She was looking forward to move in. She'd spent money on home inspection, and I talked her out of buying it. And she was just so torn up about it. She just decided to rent. And honestly, we never heard from her again after that. Now, I don't get paid unless she closes on that house, right? But ethically, and as a human being, as somebody that has daughters that girl's age, I go to sleep at night knowing that her family is not living in the house.
Right.
So yeah, sometimes being a realtor is definitely not it's not what everybody thinks it would be. It is not all glamour, living your life on a yacht, taking, just it's a hard job. And when I was taking my real estate exam or classes, I was, I've been in business before, and I owned a business before, so I kind of knew a little bit about business. And I was they asked these people, they would always ask these people in these classes, why do you want to become a realtor? And they would all say, well, because I don't want a boss. Man, that is the dumbest thing I had ever heard, because in real estate right now, I've got about 20 bosses. I've got about 15 buyers and 5 sellers, and they call me at all hours of the night. And if you're coaching a soccer game, they're calling you, they're texting you, and it's my obligation and my duty to respond. I remember my second daughter's senior year of high school. There was a band concert, and it was a big Christmas concert, and I remember having to step out of that. It was her last concert in the band. I had to step out and take a call, and I missed the whole concert. And that's the things that you don't see about being a realtor, the missing of certain events, of having to take calls at all hours of the night. I have shown houses on Christmas Day, because not everybody celebrates Christmas.
Right.
What about that, right? But if it's your listing and you got to sell it, and your client has asked you to sell it, if somebody wants to see their house on Christmas Day, you're showing that house on Christmas Day. So yeah, it's not all it's cracked up to be. Every transaction is very different, it's very unique. And there's some of them may be a little bit easier, but there's some that are very complicated, and it really takes somebody that understands the real estate process, the legalities, the property conditions, the cost to get things fixed. It really takes somebody that knows what they're doing. It really does.
Now, JJ, once someone has secured their finances, found an agent, what are some of the expectations that we'll lean on the new home buyer that they may not expect going into the transaction, that let's just kind of put it out there, like what should a new home buyer expect trying to go through the home buying process now that they've locked down a loan, and now that they've locked down a good agent that has their best interests at heart?
Just to be prepared. The next thing they need to looking for the right house, the right deal for them, the piece that's going to fit their lifestyle. That's understanding how that's going to work, and then understanding that sometimes these the people on the other side that they're going to be negotiating against, sometimes they're a little bit more difficult than others. Sometimes they're easy to work with, sometimes they're not quite so easy to work with. I just heard of a deal just a while ago from another agent that the whole deal came apart because the buyer wants to close on Thursday and the seller doesn't want to close until Friday.
No.
Really, it's a day.
Right.
And they couldn't come to agreement, and so the whole deal falls apart. So, I think the next thing the buyers need to understand is that every real estate transaction brings together a lot of different personality types, and sometimes those personalities don't mesh, or so one party wants something their way. And really, when you enter into a real estate transaction, there's you know yes, you want to negotiate, you want your agent to negotiate hard for you, but you also have to understand that there's another party involved, and a lot of times it's going to be compromise. It's going to be give and take. And so in some transactions, their sellers or buyers aren't interested in giving anything. Um, so just understanding that every transaction is different, and I mean, you could buy a house, house A, and then it not work out, and then house B works out with flying colors. So when sometimes you hear horror, you may hear horror stories about these people that bought a house. Well, that house may not have been the problem. Sometimes it's the personalities attached to that real estate transaction that were the problem. Now, sometimes the house is the problem, like the example I gave earlier, where the house was sitting, in sewage. That house was definitely the problem in that deal. The seller wanted to sell it, and they were very cooperative, and the buyer wanted to buy it, but the house just wasn't good. So the buyers just need to understand that they're probably going to be in for a little bit of an emotional roller coaster in some transactions. Our obligation, or our goal as real estate on our team, is for everybody to leave their real estate transaction thinking that was the most easiest. We like to get that comment. I always heard that it was really hard to buy a house, and all of my friends told me that this was going to be really hard, and this was really easy. That's the conversation we want to have at the closing table. And I would say probably about 80% of the time that's the case, but there's 20% of the time where, man, everybody's like just ready to be done with everybody in the transaction. So I think buyers, after they find their agent, they got to find that house, and then understand that there's going to be a lot of different pieces that is going to make it, that could make it a really simple process, or it could be a rough ride.
Now, you touched on one thing, that the process can be an emotional roller coaster. Now, for my listeners out there, we talk mindset, and I know just when I bought a house and going through the process, at times our mind and our emotions get sucked into one house or the dream house, and it doesn't go the way that we wanted it to go, or we missed out, you know. And again, we're speaking on Texas right now. So what is your advice, if you're in a hot market for a buyer who, either gets outbid, or, the expectation of wanting to wait and look? Like, what do you advise your clients that their mind has to be ready to? Do they need to pull the trigger right away? Do they have time to make a decision? Like, what is that? How do you walk them through kind of market conditions when market is hot like it is in Texas right now?
Okay, I'm going to answer that two ways. The Texas market, especially the Dallas market, you don't have time to wait. And I had to tell that to somebody. I was talking. I did a first time home buyer consult today, and I mean, I'm always reassuring. I don't care if you buy a house tomorrow. I don't care if you buy a house 2 years from today. I've got buyer that I've been working with for almost 5 years, and they are waiting for the exact right house. They have been looking every day. Now, the nice they don't they just look at them online, and if they see one, they want us to go look at it. But this has been 5 years, and we've only really shown them 4 houses in person, but they're waiting for the right house. The buyer that I was talking to earlier today, the first time home buyer, one thing I'm stressing to buyers is I am not going to high pressure you, but sometimes in this market, it may seem like we're high pressuring, because it has nothing to do with us. If you want a house and that house comes on the market today, you better decide to buy it today, because I'll give you an example. I put a house on the market in Irving, Texas, not this Monday, but the Monday before last. By Thursday, I had 10 offers on that house. The house we listed for $230, We accepted an offer for 240 in 4 days. 10 offers, $10,000 above list price. That's not high pressure sales agent talking. That's the market talking. That's what the market is giving you as a buyer in this market. So we never want to be pushy. And like I said, I don't care if you buy a house today, tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now. You got to understand, and we like I said, when we do our buyer presentation, we explain the market, because this is not a buyer's market. This is a seller's market. We have 1.7 months housing supply in the Dallas market right now. A seller's market is anything 6 months or less of 6 months of housing supply. We have 1.7 months of housing supply.
Oof.
I've never seen it that low. Between 6 and 7 months is a neutral market, and 7 months and above of housing supply is a buyer's market. Now, we're nowhere near a buyer's market. Now, a lot of my buyers say, well, why should I be buying a house right now? Well, you should be buying a house right now because that house that you're looking at this year at $200,000, next year is going to be $230,000.
Right.
Okay, so are you going to waiting a year and spending $30,000 more? The second reason it's a good time to buy is interest rates are super low. I haven't had a buyer in the last 5 closings. None of my buyers have paid more than 3% interest on their loans. That's crazy. That is crazy. So low interest rates and quick equity buildup, and that's pretty much Texas wide right now.
Right.
So to answer your question, a buyer needs to be ready to buy. Be ready to buy immediately, not considering it, not thinking about it, and offering a realistic offer. There's no the days right now of coming in $5,000, $2,000 low, having somebody pay your closing costs. That's not happening right now. Not when sellers are getting 10 offers in 4 days and selling for $10,000 more than list price. I've had to put plenty. I was working with a buyer, and it was a $450,000 house. It was multiple offer situations. We offered $465,000. And we guaranteed any appraisal shortage. If the appraisal came in low, we guaranteed it.
Wow.
That's really what buyers are having to do. Now, in a year, that house will probably be selling for $500,000 because it was on an acre. It's a really high demand property. So to follow up on your other question, and I'm glad you talked about mindset, because this is one thing I'm really big about is what are you attracting? Okay. And I've been doing this long enough to know when I'm going to have a bumpy transaction because of my client. They have this mindset: oh, we're going to lose. We're not going to find the house.
Right.
The house is good. Sometimes the mindset, what you attract into a real estate transaction, the buyers, I've noticed that sometimes it comes to fruition. They attract all this negative energy around their transaction, and you're trying to keep everything in a positive way for the transaction. And sometimes you have to kind of try to negate some of that negative energy that they're having. When you enter a real estate transaction, try to be very positive about it. There are going to be hiccups. There are going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be some conflicts with personalities, with your opposition, with your seller, with your buyer. There are going to be those hiccups, like the case of the people that can't agree on a Thursday or a Friday close. That's just ridiculous. What kind of energy are they giving off into that transaction? Your bottom line is you got to get your family into a house. You got to get into a house. Just work the positives and think the positive and imagine yourself into that house, and that everything's going to go well. And just that positive mindset will really help the real estate transaction quite a bit. I find myself, one time I had a buyer one time that every time we went to a house, it would find like something crazy wrong. Like one time it was the wooden floors were too slick, and they were worried they were going to slip and fall all the time, and that they wanted to have the seller go in and rough up the floors so they wouldn't slip all the time, because it was a really nice wood floor. But why would you just make up that negative story? Like, why would you? It just didn't make sense to me. We ended up finding them a house that had carpet, so that solved that problem. But just mindset going into a deal, it can play a huge role too.
And so JJ, we're gonna flip to the seller side, but before we do that, if you had to kind of sign off and give, you know, 3 tips for a buyer in 2021 that's looking to buy a house, and it could be general. Again, I know we only know the Texas market, but in generalities for a real estate transaction, what would be 3 tips that my listeners can take away if they're looking to buy a house in 2021?
Number one, and I can't stress this enough. And again, I don't care if you're buying. I'm not high pressure. Buy the house now. Buy it quickly because housing prices are only going up and they're going up super fast. Don't be the one that's paying $30,000 more in a year. Be the one that's got $30,000 of equity in their house in a year. That's number one. Number two, find good professionals. Find good professionals that you trust and who know what they're doing. Your lender is critical, absolutely critical piece. Make sure that they are responsive, that they answer their phones, that they don't disappear on you, that they know what they're doing, and that they're going to do the right job for you. Your agent is just as important. Make sure that they've got the experience that you need. This is a business transaction. This is a business transaction for you. This is something that's very critical that you need to find an agent that knows what they're doing. Um, I'm not going to say, I mean, I have seen plenty of agents really mess things up for their client. And that's not a good thing when you're buying one of the most expensive things. So buy quickly, find good professionals. And the third thing, go into any real estate transaction with a positive mindset that house is going to be that what you is going to be a good is going to be a wonderful home for you, number one. But number two is going to be a place where you start building wealth, because I'm a big believer in real estate, owning real estate and building wealth. So those are the three things that I would say. If any buyers out there, take those three things away. Call a lender tomorrow. Get ready to buy the house quickly. Find your good professionals, people that know what they're doing, and have a positive mindset about the whole experience.
All right, JJ. Now we talked Texas is a seller's market, so I just have to put a for sale sign on the front of my house, right? It's that easy.
Um, it can be. It can be. There's a lot of people have this idea that it can be that easy. Sometimes it is. Most of the time, it's not. Number one, if you're deciding, well, it's such a hot market, I'm just going to sell the house by myself. Okay, well, that's fine. That's not a problem. You want to try to save some commissions. That's understandable. I mean, everybody, yeah, but 80% of people wouldn't do it again, and there's a reason why. For example, um, like the house that I put in Irving, we ended up again. It was my seller is dealing with a brother's estate, knows nothing about the house, and we find out it has all these foundation repairs or foundation issues. It has the cast iron line. House is so old that the cast iron line is collapsed for the sewer. I mean, and my seller, he doesn't really know much about those kind of things. I do, and I'm telling him how serious those kind of things are, and that we're going to have to disclose those kind of things to the next buyer, and that we probably need to work. And he's leaning on my advice. If you're doing something on your own, whose advice are you going to lean on?
Right.
That's number one. Number two, so you just put a sign in your yard, and only the people that are driving by that sign are going to see your house. Same house. I put that house on the market in Irving for 230. It went up to 240. I had 10 offers. I had that because we as professionals exposed that listing to hundreds of thousands of people. Whereas if that house only had one for sale by owner sign in the front yard, the only people going to offer on that house are the people driving up and down that street.
Right.
They're going to get 10 offers. Is it going to go $10,000 above list price? No. So there's a lot of reasons to use a professional. On the backside as a seller, we handle all of the contract close pieces, which are very difficult to get through if you're somebody brand new. Um, the that's a huge piece of the puzzle as a seller. Is what is the when they do the inspections, who's going to be there at the inspection, what's the inspector going to find, what do we want to know as a seller? Like,
Right.
for example, I don't when another agent has an inspection done on one of my listings, I tell them, I don't want to know what's wrong with the house. Just send us what you guys want, and send us the specific pieces, because we don't want to know everything about what's wrong with the house. If the seller's agent or buyer's agent sends me their home inspection, now I, as the agent, have seen it. It's the same thing as my seller seeing it. So what if my seller sees, so we understand how to keep our sellers in compliance, but also as protected as possible in the real estate transaction. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong on the sale of a house. So it's not just easy as putting a sign in the yard, and doing it that way. A lot of what's that?
No, and I said just and hoping for the best, that once you put that
Yeah.
sign out, that it's good to go from there. Now, folks that are looking to sell again, and we're just kind of honing in on a hot sellers market, are there things? What do sellers need to expect? Again, it is a hot market, and yes, you may get multiple offers, but to get the most out of the house, what should a seller expect that they need to do for their house, in order to try to, like you said, you went up 10 grand. Are there things sellers can do to their house without having to do a full-blown renovation to get the most out of their house?
Some of the simple things are, the number one thing is, like 91% of buyers fall in love with a house from the front yard. Curb appeal is huge. If they fall in love with the house on the outside, that they're going to want to come inside and make the house work for them. So curb appeal is massive, and that's such an inexpensive thing. I mean, just remulching a bed, making sure there's no weeds in the yard, making sure the grass looks pretty nice. That's something that you can do on a weekend, and making sure the bushes are trimmed. Just making sure that the buyer falls in love with your house at the front, at the very beginning. Much like, they tell you, your first impression of another person is built in the first 5 seconds, right? And you meet somebody and you already kind of know if you like them or not, right? Same
Right.
thing with a house. So you really want to spend your time at curb appeal, and it's not an expensive deal. I mean, you can get out there on a weekend, get some, $5 bags of mulch, remulch your yard, trim the bushes, uh, cut the grass, maybe throw some grass out in a patch where it's not growing, maybe repaint. This is the real place, the real important place, the front porch. Clean it off, make sure there's no leaves, because what happens when we show houses, I'm showing a house, I got my buyers behind me. One of the places that the buyer's going to spend most of the time when they're at the house is on the front porch, waiting for the realtor to open up the combination lockbox or get the key out. And they're
Right.
standing there looking up, looking all around. They see cobwebs, they see dust, they see leaves, they see an old newspaper there. That's a turnoff. Get that stuff, get the front porch cleaned up. That's an easy fix. And the curb appeal is an easy thing. Then the other thing is, especially with some of these newer construction houses where the secondary bedrooms are 10 by 10 or 10 by 12, or very small, get everything, declutter. Anything that you do not need in your house, get it out. Put it in the garage. Nobody really cares what the garage looks like. The man does, but you're not really selling the man, you're selling the woman, right? Um, and a garage is a garage. Put all your junk in the garage, or get a storage building. And anything you don't need that's in the house, just get it out. Get it out. Declutter. You need in a 10 by 10 room, you need a bed and a dresser. That's it. Everything else goes. Because if you have a bunch of stuff in that room, if you have a bed, a desk, a dresser, and another dresser, and that room starts to look really, really small. And that's going to be a turnoff. You want those secondary bedrooms to look really big. So that's a simple fix too. Um, in this market, if you're a seller, I'm telling you, don't do anything. Just put it on the market. because you're going to probably get what you're going to like. For example, the Irving house. I keep going back to it. The house is a mess. We put it on the market for 230, and it was aggressive, and we got 240 because again, we have a massive housing shortage. And just so you understand the numbers as a seller, December this year, from December the year prior to
So
December 2020,
okay, so 2019 to 2020.
2019 to 2020, you had 42% fewer houses on the market.
Wow.
42% fewer houses. That's a lot of houses that are missing on the market. And we already had a housing shortage in Dallas. Okay.
Texas has been hot for a little bit.
So now, and this is what happened. Basically, this is what happened this last year. We always tell people to get their house ready to list in March, April, May, because March people are starting to get tax returns back, and that's when buyers are starting to come out. Nobody really looks at houses in December, January, or November, December, January, February. Those are slower times. I mean, you do have some transactions in those times, but really, the market starts waking back up in March.
Right.
Well, what happened? So everybody's getting their house ready to go in March this last year, and what happened? Well, COVID hit, and now everybody's self quarantining, and we're all having to stay at the house, right? And so a lot of people that were getting ready to sell their house, and this is not just specific to our market, this is probably nationwide. Now everybody, now you're having sellers decide, oh wait, we were going to sell this year, but I don't really know what's going on. I don't really want a lot of people walking through my house that may have COVID, right? So now nobody put their house on the market in 2020. And so that's why we have this huge housing shortage. I have tons of buyers. We can't put them into a house because there's no houses for them to go into. A lot of them are having to build from the ground up. So as a seller, you got to understand what this market. As soon as you put your house on the market, be expecting it's going to sell. You need to have an exit strategy too. You need to know where you're going to land because you don't want to be homeless. So that's the other challenge is if you're going to sell and buy something, you got to understand. Yeah, you're going to have a really easy time selling, but on the buy side, you better be ready for some rocky roads. So you need to maybe have maybe a family member that you can live with for a little while, so you make sure you're not homeless, because the buy side is the tricky piece right now in this market. But sellers, those things, understanding the market, curb appeal, decluttering, those things will really honestly, those are the only things you really need to do in this market.
No,
I'm not big on telling people, well, you need to repaint your house.
Right.
You need to renovate. You spend $20,000 on renovating your kitchen. In this market, why? I mean, people are buying houses just because they have no place to live and they need a house. So yeah, I in this market, I'm saying be aggressive with pricing, and just kind of make the house look livable. Make it look, don't need to do it now. If it's a house that's in serious disrepair, then I'm definitely going to say, well, you need to repaint and all this other stuff.
Right.
I did have a listing not too long ago that we struggled with selling because the colors and I didn't think it was going to be a big deal, but it ended up being a big kind of a big deal. The colors were just crazy. I mean, nice colors, but it was very specific taste. I mean, there's like fluorescent orange, a pink in the dining room. They were, they just liked their vibrant colors, and I mean, they looked fine, but just, I mean, it took us a while to get that one sold just because of the colors. Finally, I had to tell them to tone down the pink. So.
Gotcha. And I think, just kind of based on hearing everything right now, I think the bigger thing to worry about is that exit strategy on where you're going to go, being that houses are flying off the market pretty quick. And that's something that as a buyer or a seller that you really need to consider. Personally, our brother-in-law, they did the same thing. They're in that Dallas market. They had a new house built in Red Oak, but they moved in with my mother-in-law, for the time being, because their house sold in like 3 days. It was just like, and buyers are they'll go through the loan process, but a lot of times, that's it, because like you said, they need a place to move into. So they had the 30 days to pretty much pack everything and find their own place, even though they found a new build, but now they had to wait 9 months for that new home to be built. So, just make sure you guys have that exit strategy. And if you haven't thought about it, if you're thinking about selling, make sure you think about it and really know your market to see what kind of exit strategy I really need.
Yeah, and that's something that's really critical. I mean, the last 2 years, I think we could have probably put 40, at least we talked to at least 40 sellers that were going to put their house on the market. And a couple of things they realized, and they would talk themselves out of it. The other is when they started to look at that exit strategy, that house that they're living in right now, they hadn't really anticipated how much more housing has gotten.
Right.
So they may have wanted to upsize or even downsize. Like if you were like an empty nester, and they're saying, well, the house I'm in right now is, I'm going to be paying more for a smaller house.
Right.
So you got to understand what the market is doing as well, because you may be making a lot of money on the sale, but you're also going to be spending a lot more money on the buy to get probably what you want. Uh, so that's, understanding that market is really critical to a seller, and understanding that your house will probably sell fast, and you need to know where you're going to land. Um, and really understanding what the prices are in today's market, as opposed to when you bought that house 10 years ago. Like the house I'm in right now, we bought it for 250. Um, if I wanted to buy something like this right now in the same neighborhood, you're looking at $600,000, brand new. So it's the market's changed. There's nothing static about the real estate market. It changes from year to year. It's just like the stock market. Housing prices go up. Thankfully, they haven't gone down in a long time. So
No, that's good. That's good. Well, JJ, if folks, again, I know we have listeners across the nation, but if folks just want to get some more real estate information from you guys, where would they be able to find you guys?
our website is agentsofliberty.com. And they can, all of our contact information is there. I also have my own website, jjchapa.com, which is just my jjchapa.com. All of my information is there. Of course, my phone is always open for texts or phone calls, regardless of where you are. I'm a big believer in people owning real estate. It builds your wealth quickly. It's something that everybody should have, because, again, it's 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 just something that I've been doing I have about 20 properties now myself.
That's awesome.
And what you can make on real estate, and is it can really put you in a really good position financially down the road, especially in markets where equity is building up. So if anybody has a question about anywhere in the country about investing in real estate or just owning real estate, my phone line's always open. It's 214-837-0010. Again, 214-837-0010. They can email me at jj@jjchapa.com. Find me on my website. And we're always, I'm always open to helping people get ahead in life, and especially through real estate. It's a big positive thing in this market. I've helped a lot of people really get further ahead, and that's really important to me as a realtor.
Yeah, most definitely. And everyone, I'm telling you, having a real estate agent as a point of contact, and we've talked about networking, it's always a good point of contact to have someone within the real estate market, because guys like JJ network across the country. So whether you're in Arizona and California, he most likely will have a like-minded agent that takes care of his clients like he does in Texas somewhere else. So again, just know that real estate agents tend to network very, very well, and they try to make contacts, across the country with like-minded agents that operate like themselves, so that if they ever do have someone relocate, from their home state there, they already have that connection and know someone that's going to take care of their client. Because again, it is not the transaction does not stop, at the closing table. You end up being a client for life. I still get, Christmas cards and everything from the agent that I used to buy my house here in Austin, and that was 4 years ago now, and she still follows up and does her due diligence just to check, just to make sure that we're good. So again, use JJ as a resource, as just anyone else that I've brought onto the show, as a resource and a guide to help you guys if you are looking at investing in real estate, buying your first home, selling your first home. And we'll even have to bring JJ on to talk about a segment on just real estate investing and kind of that wealth growth in the future. JJ, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. And I definitely appreciate it, guys. All the links for JJ will be on the website. So when you go to projectlifepodcast.com, and you go into his profile, we'll have all the links to his team to be able to reach him if you guys do have any other questions. JJ, thank you again for your time, sir.
Absolutely, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
No problem. Thanks, JJ.
Blessings.